Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Voices of the South. In this podcast, we interview social innovators from the Global South and those who support them so they can share their stories and the changes they have inspired. Thank you for listening, and be sure to enjoy this episode. The International Youth Foundation, sometimes better known as IYF, is an organization that has more than 30 years of work empowering vulnerable youth around the world. Throughout its work, the IYF has helped youth of Asia, Africa, Latin America, Europe, and everything in between to obtain the skills and the tools to create a better future for themselves. From facilitating access to knowledge on how to successfully create and run social innovation or getting a good job, to giving funding and network opportunities, the IYF, alongside the youth working with them, has changed the lives of countless of people. Today, in the Voices of the South, we are lucky to be interviewing Sarah Jonson, who, at the moment, functions as the technical advisor of youth agency and engagement. However, before this, she was the program coordinator of Africa and Eurasia. As such, without anything more to say, welcome Sarah to the Voices of the South.
Carlos, thank you so much. It's really a privilege and an honor to be with you today.
No, really, the honor is ours. It's always amazing to hear the stories and always amazing to hear the work that people has been doing to change the world. I mean, sometimes it feels like we are just stopping a little bit of the avalanche of things that are happening, especially during the last few years that have been chaotic, I would say is the best word to describe them. Um, so it's during this time that we need the inspiring and we need these interviews to inspire people to become change makers, to become agents of change. But how about we start with the interview a little bit? I would like you with your words. I obviously gave a little bit of introduction for those that don't know who or what is the International Youth Foundation, but I don't know if you could tell us a little bit more about the organization, just some stuff of what Sarah Johnson thinks that the International Youth Foundation is.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Um, so I think, today we're talking about social innovation. So before I start talking about my role and how it connects to doing that at IYF, I'll just do what you said and give a bit of overview about um, us as an organization. So we have three strategic objectives that support our mission of connecting young people with opportunities to transform their lives. The first is strengthening youth agency. The second is expanding youth economic opportunities. And the third is facilitating more youth inclusive systems. So, as you just shared, my title is Technical Advisor for Youth Agency and Engagement, which means that in my role, I'm responsible for advancing our youth agency strategy. Now, you may be wondering, how does IYF define and understand youth agency? So, as an organization, we think of youth agency as the desire and ability of young people to make decisions and drive change in their lives, in their communities, and also in their larger spheres of influence. And we think that in order for that to happen, young people need life skills. They need the civic knowledge and skills to understand what's happening in my community. Why is this issue happening in my neighborhood? But also knowledge and skills to know how might I address this or what are the different ways that I could tackle this problem. And then another thing that's a really key outcome that we would want to see in our youth agency programming is increased community participation, which can look a lot of different ways. So, this could be, for example, a young person participates in community service, maybe they participate in an advocacy campaign, or even it could look like serving as a youth counselor in a local governance structure. But one specific type of participation that we have always promoted and supported in our work is youth growing and sustaining their own development solutions. And that's really where the linkage between our work and the social innovation ecosystem comes in. So, historically, as you're aware, Carlos, because you participated in our Youth Action Net Fellowship program, We focused a lot of our work in this area on strengthening the leadership skills of young social entrepreneurs and also providing them networking and coaching support to really scale and sustain the impact that they're already having in their initiatives. But we also do this in other ways and through other models, such as engaging young people in project design and evaluation, supporting things like youth participatory action research. And recently, and part of what I'm excited to share with you about today is just through funding young social change makers through our Global Youth Resiliency Fund. So that's kind of a high level overview of what we do at IYF and how we think about and address social innovation and young social change makers.
Sounds amazing. Yeah, as you mentioned before, I was or became part of the International Youth Action, no, sorry, the Youth Action Net at the moment in 2014. And I was sort of lucky enough to be, I think it was on the middle moment of the program, because after me, it took another 5 years or something like that, for the program to come to an end, which is, well, something that happens naturally over time, and changes and everything that comes and goes. And yes, and just to sort of like reinforce what you just said, the International Youth Foundation definitely is one of the actors that supports a lot of grassroots programs and grassroots ideas of the youth people in the world, which sadly is there are not that many actors that do it. At least not the way the International Youth Foundation does it, which is really on the we trust that you know what is happening in your community since you know you have been living there for a while, um, and we want to give you the tools to be better at doing what you think you want to or what you and your community believe is a good idea or where they are going. Um, but talking about everything that has been going on and being your history and your work history about in so many countries and different areas, Africa, Euro-Asia, it's wow. It must have been so many different realities, so many different people to work alongside. So I don't know if you can tell us a little bit more on how is that you've been coordinating everything that has happened in this area.
It's really cool. It's really fun. I would say when I think about my role working at IYF and what I get to do to promote social innovation in the global south, some words come to mind: fun, exciting, rewarding, but also challenging. So, like I said in the beginning, one of the main ways right now that I get to do this in my job is by serving as the program lead for our Global Youth Resiliency Fund, which, as the name suggests, it's global. We have 28 young social entrepreneurs from around the world who we supported with grants of $10,000 to support their COVID responses. So this is really fun and exciting because when COVID happened, like you said, it was super chaotic, it was really hectic. But we knew that young people were going to be innovating and leading in so many important ways. Um, and I think like as an organization, we just kind of always know that. It's an assumption that we have based on our experience, but we also started seeing all these amazing stories and initiatives pour in from our global network, and we wanted to support what they're doing. So one of the ways that we did this is we reached out to some funders, and with generous funding from Conrad Hilton Foundation and Burberry, we created this fund with a really simple goal, which was to put resources in the hands of youth-led ventures, and that's both social enterprises and nonprofits that were delivering vital work in response to the pandemic. So when I think in the vein of exciting, rewarding, and inspiring, um, it's cool. Like I get to hear about and contribute to or amplify the great work that young people are already doing. And you said it really well. It's like these are the people that come from the communities. They're the ones doing the great work. So really, like my role, IYF's role as like an international youth serving NGO, it is that promotion, it's that support, it's the amplification, the visibility, the funding piece. And so when I feel like we're doing that well, it makes me really happy. So I would say right now we're getting some final reports back from those 28 awardees. And some of the things that stand out to me as interesting and exciting is how this funding, or maybe the networking with their peers, or maybe the learning that we provided, or the visibility, like I was just saying, how that can contribute to new or bigger opportunities. So it's great to see. I've been saying recently, the amount of funding is relative. For some people, 10,000 US dollars might be a lot. For others, it's just, yeah, that's cool, thank you, but that's just like a small part of our operating budget. But when it's catalytic, or when it leads to a $30,000 award, or when it leads to a bigger partnership, that's really, really great to see. Um, Other things, participation in this, I'm seeing come in that it's supporting changes in strategy. So before this award, I used to think of my work in this specific way, and now we got to expand to 5 new schools, which has allowed us to kind of change the way we talk about um, our services, and expanded our partnership with the Ministry of Education, for example. And then yeah, those new partnerships that are just popping up are really cool. And then inspiring, I think, is also there. I think that's a big part of, what's fun for me is just like getting to see the cool work. So last week I attended a closing event for one of our awardees, Simena, and her organization Semia Intercultural, and they do intercultural citizenship education. And I knew about her project. I can read it on the website. I understand high level what the model is about. And what they do is really to, it's because of incidences of racial and ethnic based bullying in schools. So they kind of promote, they go into schools and they help students to understand and appreciate their own personal identity, to understand and appreciate the different identities and cultures of their peers. And then they do like an arts based final project. And I'm telling you, Carlos, I was listening. I was like, cool, cool. That's nice. Great to be here. And then you see these projects. You see this 15-year-old Peruvian young woman, and the projects, it's like Oscar. I said this should be like Oscar. These should win Oscars. Like the quality, the richness, the beauty, the depth, the complexity. And that's what's really fun about my job is like I'm constantly reminded of the potential of young people, and like if you just give them the opportunity to lead or support them to tell their story, it's they're going to do things that you could never expect. So that's a really exciting part of my current work supporting this.
Yeah, young people can do so many wonderful things when they have the resources. They can do so much, and even when they don't have the resources, it's amazing what you can do without anything. I have the joy of meeting throughout my career as a social innovator. I managed to get so many people that are so amazing, creating projects so rich and so powerful with basically nothing. A lot of the time was or a lack of a lot of things, and then you can see them creating the new stuff and better stuff when they actually get the opportunity to get resources, which sadly in a lot of developing countries, youth innovation doesn't really get to be recognized as much as it should be or as much as it could be recognized. But yeah, that's I digress, and we could talk about that for hours. So maybe let's start going a little bit more on the interview, and let's go a little bit to the past. Let's go a little bit to your previous experiences and ask you, well, what led you to start in the work in social innovation? What did your parents, your family said when you told them, "Oh yeah, by the way, I'm gonna dedicate myself to to work for an NGO as the International Youth Foundation or something similar?" I mean, in this context of life that we have, where a lot of the families expect you to be a doctor, expect you to be an engineer or something more, let's say, grabbable.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, Coming with this idea, what happened then?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's an interesting reflection. Um, I I think for me, when I think about it, it's a combination. How I ended up in this space and doing what I do, it's a combination of values and worldview, and also formative education experiences. So when you talk about my family, what comes to my mind is that I grew up in a household full of book lovers, and I was raised to be conscientious of and attentive to the experience and needs of others. So there's some deeply rooted values that are relevant to my work that came um, from how I was raised, and that's related to fairness, inclusion, and equity. I think also because of that passion of reading, I'm also a big empathy advocate, which I think is a really fundamental ability and skill that social innovators have to put themselves in the shoes of others and to consider challenges from multiple angles. Um, but that doesn't really answer your question about how did they feel about me being this versus a doctor. I think I was fortunate, not everyone has the luxury of. Um, I felt very well supported to do what was interesting to me. And aligned with my professional goals. Um, and so I think a lot of that is just the support and the privilege of my education. So part of my education experience that really informed my interests and what I pursued in my profession came in my undergraduate studies. And during my undergraduate studies, I was studying sociology and business, and that combination was really powerful in shaping how I see the world, and specifically the interplay between business, media, and civil society. So you can imagine studying sociology and business. And one day I would go to a business class and I would learn about marketing. And then I would go across campus and I would sit in an urban sociology class where I learned about the rise of planned obsolescence, which is basically all about how companies strategically design their products or market their products to become irrelevant or undesirable in order to promote consistent and really a lot of times unnecessary consumption. Or I would be learning about how, in certain places, a well manicured lawn, grass that you grow and cut, came to be seen as a status symbol. But that the creation and maintenance of these lawns is wreaking environmental havoc in our world. And so that interplay between capitalism, human development, and planetary well being has always really gripped me. And it made me really passionate about these topics, including ethical leadership and how you can be a part of like facilitating systems changes for good. So one of the things that I was involved with in school was a group called Net Impact, which is a grassroots global movement of students and emerging impact leaders who want to use their skills to make a positive impact for people and planet. So at that time, I won't say what year it was. I won't out myself how old I am. But that was the time when lots of people were talking about the triple bottom line, the people, profit, planet, and also people were big, passionate about sustainability, but also suspicious and wary of greenwashing. So that was really my initial entry point into this social innovation sphere. And it's interesting because I was thinking how to connect that initial interest with what I do now, which is youth development for a youth NGO. And I remember at that time, Carlos, I often framed that business focus as a means to temper my youthful idealism or to make sure that I was staying practical, so to speak. And now it's 2022. I don't really see it that way at all. Like, I think in so many ways, things that used to be, or some people still consider idealism, it's just straight up realism. Like, our planet is on fire, our democratic institutions are under threat. And it's not just like young people are sentimental. We really truly need to fundamentally shift the way we eat, live, work, move, and relate to people. So that's how I connect that with my current work and my passion for youth development. And I think that shifting that perception that, a lot of people think young people are passionate but naive, idealistic but not necessarily experienced. It's a big part of what we do at IYF. And we really feel that young people are always on the forefront, and if you stick around at IYF long enough, you'll for sure hear somebody say, young people aren't just the leaders of the future, they're the leaders of today. So that's why I think it's really important to support young social change makers, and how I came to be passionate about this type of work.
That's a really interesting story. I mean, I'm really glad that your family supported you on your career path. Is sadly not that often, so I'm really glad when I hear families being supporting their kids and and the youth in their families. Um, Sometimes it takes a little bit longer time than it should, and a little bit more of convincing, but it, when it happens, it's really nice. What I found super interesting also is that you were going to literally the opposite point of life, and one point going to sociology, which probably also gave you some interaction with contract cultures and sort of like these resistance against what marketing, what business sort of tries to drive and a lot of time invest on. As you say, uh, program it sorry, I forgot the term of it, but yeah, a lot of the products that we have now, a lot of the products that we are using now are programmed to be obsolete a year, sometimes even 6 months, if you are not all the fast fashion shenanigans, cell phones, there's always a new bigger cell phone than the one before, and it's like, what's the change now? What's the new part of this? Like, is it a bigger screen? How, when is the difference? When we start noticing how fast is one to the other? Like, but the marketing is like, yeah, you need to have a new and everything. And then sociology, historically, sociology has been one of the studies of the campus studies that is like, no, you need to step back, think what is happening, and analyze how everything is interacting with each other. So I find it super interesting, and I'm also quite glad that you landed on this side of the fence, so to say, that on the other side. I mean, it's nice and it's necessary, especially in this moment of life, to use for social innovator to use the tools, a lot of the tools that the business world is using, and to make social innovators sustainable and to be able to reach and be independent. And I think, well, also on the other side, businesses should learn a little bit of social innovators, and not a little bit, a lot of it, because the world is coming to an end sooner than we thought.
Yeah, yeah, it's so true, man. And that's why, when I was referencing back then, people talked about triple bottom line. Now, at least what I'm hearing is more in terms of like the circular economy. And I I don't know how much it's changing, but I see progress and movement, and people are provoking, like corporate social responsibility as a cover for all the like bad stuff you're doing. People are like, young people know what's happening. Like now they're like connected, they learn so many things. They're, engaging in learning and advocacy online that, people, you can't get away with that. So I think there's still some of it, even if it's not greenwashing, now I see it like woke washing. People say the same things about like social justice. Is I think society continues to elevate like, we know better than to believe you, or like you're saying this until you're doing this also, then like we're still waiting for you to do better. So it's a really interesting space to be a part of for sure.
Thank you, Sarah, for sharing all of this information with us. But now I wanted to ask you about what is to promote social innovation in the global south? What is to come to these communities or to these universities, schools, or these institutions and tell them, hey, we can change the world. It's not going to be easier, but we can help you with this, and we can help you with your idea. How is it that how perhaps, well, yeah, you have been all over the world. maybe a memory that you have, uh, yeah, a memory that you remember the most of this example.
It's a good question. It's an interesting way of um, framing it. I'll have to come back if I can think of a specific memory from a trip or a project or a specific venture or person. But I did want to share more reflecting on kind of what it means to support social change in the global south. And one of the things I like that your podcast, it's Voices of the Global South. Yes, it's about social innovation, but specifically, you're focusing on and celebrating and championing innovation in the global South. So when I think of that question and I think of Sarah Johnson sitting in Baltimore, Washington D.C. in the United States, what does that mean and what should it look like? And how do we as an organization seek to do that, and what are the things that we don't do? So I think, you know, the starting point for us is going back to nobody knows the issues in communities better than young people themselves. So what we don't do is go in and say, hey, you want to improve water, sanitation, and hygiene, you need to do this. We always start by saying, what are the ideas you already have? What are you already doing? And then I think what we can offer skills. So, training. A lot of times we do leadership skills, but for us, leadership skills encompasses a lot. And that's part of what you did in your fellowship experiences. How do I network with influential leaders? How do I connect with peers that can teach me new things? How do I improve my communication and storytelling skills so that I can better convey what my idea is or what I'm trying to do? There's also things like organizational management skills. And one thing that is really interesting to me at IYF right now is historically, like supporting youth led social change has been part of our youth agency work, and it really focused on the leadership skills piece. But we do so much around economic opportunities and economic strengthening. And one of the connections we're working to make is when you think about supporting young social entrepreneurs, yes, it's leadership, but it's also enterprise development. Like it's kind of business development services, enterprise development, organizational management and leadership, financial management, human resource management, all of those things that, in the business sector are very common. But sometimes in like international development space, leadership, we focus so much on those things and we don't kind of accompany ventures. You have the idea. Here's this specific type of support at this moment in time for these reasons. Wow, Carlos, you've been running this organization for 5 years. Where are you now? What support do you need? Okay, now you're 10 years in. What you need and the support you need is going to look different at all of those times. And so that's something that I also think about a lot and that we're trying to think through now at IYF. So in terms of right now how I'm thinking of this and what I'm learning from this Global Youth Resiliency Fund project, I was doing some research in terms of, okay, we're getting final reports, we have some cool stories, how do we want to communicate and share about this project? And I've been reading some really great blogs and reports and articles from young leaders. And one that really stood out to me, the title of the report is Young, Gifted, and Underfunded. So I told you with this one is really focused on funding. It's flexible funding. We're not telling people you can spend the money on this, but not this. And so I was trying to really understand what can IWeb do? What is our role here in terms of supporting the growth and sustainability of this work? And we actually had a focus group discussion in November where we just asked people. We had some of these awardees, I think it was about 6 or 8, had a focus group discussion. And I asked them if we were to extend this partnership or continue this project, what is the type of support that you would need? And part of the way we reflected on that was asking what the barriers they face are. And so I was really intrigued by this because I had them map barriers to their success in terms of resource flows, services and practices, norms and mindsets and policy. And for each of the people, they had like a specific colored sticky note where they put their answers, and then they could also rank and prioritize the barriers that they would want us to support them addressing first. And so to me, this was really interesting, because in terms of resource flows, there's really strong consensus that youth led ventures are understaffed, which was very linked with, um, we don't have information about or access to funding. And when we do access that funding, there's a lot of conditions and restrictions on what we can use it for. So that was a very clear message to me, and that was a very clear message to IOF. In terms of services and practices, some trends that came through were around, lack of available and affordable support services, burdensome reporting, and then there's an interesting one around mental health is not taken into consideration. So self care for young social innovators, I think, was something that stood out. And then what was really interesting, and I'm gonna try to connect the dots to what does an organization headquartered in the US, how should we consider our role in supporting social innovators in the global south, was around the norms and mindsets. And there's some really interesting stuff that came through here around power disparities into ethnocentrism, which I think like you will know, like you've lived that. You're living in Denmark, you're from Mexico, you're interviewing leaders from the global south. Like that's to me such a core tension of this work right now, is just like where's the power, who's making the decisions, who controls the funding flows, and power disparities. Like some quotes here: social impact as a domain in and of itself is mired in colonial framings. That was one person's reflection. Everything reflects the Silicon Valley approach, the North American approach. White supremacy culture and its characteristics, it's in the water. And so these are really interesting things that, you know, I think our role is to like understand what that means, what it looks like, and then as an organization, we set policy, we control practices. Like we should be conducting ourselves in a way that's responsive to those issues. And so that's what I think in terms of support. It's understanding, addressing those barriers. It's information and connections. It's eligibility and funding conditions. It's flexibility. It's decreasing administrative burdens for young people trying to access our programs and funds. And it's being thoughtful and intentional in addressing those power disparities.
Ah, God, how do I answer this without burning myself forever in the global north? Uh, yes and no. Yes. Um, how can I say it? Well, first of all, if the IYF is going to publish that study, I would love to read it. Really, specifically because it's from these really impressive people that are changing the world in many, many different ways. So I would love to read how is their experience in this area. Um, yes, what they are saying is true. The funding, especially for programs that want to create change, that want to improve something, the funding and the opportunities to get support is incredibly small. And even when you manage to get one of these opportunities, the conditions for it is impossible. It's so many things. It's they're asking you to spend, I don't know, around 40 to 60% of the resources that you get in monitoring and evaluation, which is important. It's, don't get me wrong, it's really, really important. But if we're spending more time on monitoring and evaluating the program and than doing the program, there is a conundrum there. There is something that shouldn't really be working the way it's working. Because even because as they say, it's this idea of you need to innovate, you need to change, you need to create something new, you need to be on the top of the top. There is the Silicon Valley culture, um, but at the same time, the social innovators don't get the funding or don't even get the overhead that Silicon Valley gets. Because Silicon Valley, if you go to Silicon Valley with an idea and you don't put any overhead, they immediately gonna ask you really, really kindly to get the fuck out of there, uh, because they won't trust you as an entrepreneur. They just on the other side, if you're a social innovator, and usually when you go to somebody who has the banking or who has the money to roll and help you create this idea, if you dare to put an overhead, they're going to tell you that this project is wrong because you should be able to do everything by the book. And it's impossible, especially because when we are talking and we are working with human beings who are constantly changing, and the problem is constantly changing a lot of the times, especially in these times where everything is so volatile and so unstructured. It's really hard. I might go with the project at this moment knowing from A to C what is happening, but then when I come back with the money and the resources and everything to start working on it, some small detail change, and that small detail might be the butterfly wings that created a hurricane at the end of the project.
Mm.
It's wow, yeah. I don't know what to say. Definitely, I have. I'm not gonna say the organization, but I have at some point in life managed to find that some organization that is on the one of the big ones got a and yeah, they had an intern. Nothing against the girl. She was doing an amazing job as far as I understand. But then she started to talk to me about Latin America and Mexico, and she first it was like, oh yeah, Mexico is South America. I was like, no, Mexico is considered to be North America with a part on Central America. If you want to refer to the whole region, Latin America, that's another thing. That's another concept. But she was sort of not in charge, but she was definitely involved in the program in Latin America. So if you're a person involved in a program of a developing program in Latin America, and you're not able to identify correctly that Mexico, who is the second biggest country in the region, in the Latin American region, and you are the one involved in that, and there's people in Mexico, in Brazil, in Colombia that have been doing the job for, damn, I don't know, since they were born, probably. Um, where does it go? What's the relationship here? Do we need to obey the orders of somebody in a fancy seat in Geneva or in Stockholm or in Copenhagen and focus on monitoring and evaluation, which is important? Again, it's really important. Or do we start doing the work to change things? It's really complicated. It's a decision that a lot of the social innovators face. Um, because once you take that decision, you are clearly going to see if it was little, the support was little, then it's going to be even less if you decide to say, you know what, I'm going to take my own route and focus. Because yeah, you're challenging the status quo in one way or another. But I will stop now because otherwise we could just keep chatting about.
You said don't have to answer this question in a big way that covers all the complexity, and I said explode. That's how my brain works. But yeah, it's something I really care to reflect on and think about a lot. All right, Carlos, hit me with the next cue.
Hey, this is Carlos, the host of the Voices of the South. I hope you're enjoying the episode. We certainly enjoy having you here. This is a quick pause from the episode to ask you for your help. As you know, we are a small independent project that mainly survives from volunteering and donations. As such, we depend on the support of our listeners to reach out to more voices. So, if you like our work and would like to support us, please consider rating the podcast and sharing it. Thanks to these small actions, you are helping us to grow. However, and more importantly, you are helping others to know the stories and the impact of the wonderful people who are changing the world. Yes, because otherwise this interview is going to be like three parts. I wouldn't mind, but I Yeah, it's part of the editing, and it calls a lot of things. But whenever you want to have a chat like this again, I would love to. Well, we have covered what is to promote social innovation in the global south. I am basically really, really happy that the International Youth Foundation is taking the participatory approach towards social innovation. I'm really, really happy about that. But let's move a little bit to one of the parts of the interviews that I like the most, which is the big success and the fuck ups. This obviously is from your perspective, and the fuck up is not necessarily to evidence international youth foundation for Sarah. It's more to show other social innovators that might happen to hear us that things can go higher and you still can survive and you can learn from them and be better. And not be afraid of fucking it up a little bit because you learn a lot from those and you don't really learn that much from successes. They are amazing, don't get me wrong, but you don't learn that much. So you pick if you want to start with the biggest success or with the challenge slash fuck off. But yeah, you decide.
Yeah, cool. So, to me, when you talk about the participatory approach, a lot of times people know, like, when I feel we're living our values, I feel this is a huge success. And on this Global Youth Resiliency Fund Award, I felt like IOF really lived in our values of engaging young people in the design of programs and policies that affect them. And so we engaged a subset of young social entrepreneurs. We said, hey, we have this idea to provide this flexible funding mechanism. Um, Here's our ideas about the application process, the eligibility criteria, et cetera, et cetera. What do you think? And they had a lot of feedback and suggestions, like tons of feedback. Are you going to offer the application in multiple languages? Um, are you going to allow these different types of registration ventures registered in these different ways to apply? You're requiring people to have this um, X financial arrangement, and that would exclude these types of leaders. Um, and also, like, we one of the preliminary requirements we had for selection was innovation related to COVID, and also storytelling ability. And they said to our face like this: no on storytelling. This is all about the donor getting their publicity. And there's so many people that do great work and they might not be great storytellers. They should absolutely qualify in the same way for the money. So we said, okay, note taken, we'll change that. And then in terms of the one on COVID, I thought was really cool. Originally said you have to be doing something that directly responds to COVID, or creating a better post COVID world. And then we had a conversation around what about supporting the continuity of good work during a global pandemic? So, is it necessary that they're doing something completely new? What if they're already doing something really good and they just need some bridge funding to survive the pandemic? And we made a decision that we will also consider that and prioritize that in our selection. So in the end, we offered the full experience in English and Spanish. We changed our kind of financial disbursement criteria. We changed the vetting criteria related to the COVID innovation piece. And our report was 3 questions, and each of those questions had like a 150 page, not page, word, 150 words max. And the report was really simple. How did this award affect your venture? How did this award affect you as a leader? What is one story that you think captures the impact of this award on an individual or group in your community? And that's because we asked the young people themselves, they told us, and we also we stay mindful of the trends. Like, I'm seeing peer organizations, Annie B. Casey Foundation, for example. I'm seeing peer organizations revise their overhead policy because they realized it was exclusionary for certain types of organizations. And then we're taking that in stride. We're making decisions, and it was amazing. I got an email. Somebody submitted their final report, and they said, thank you so much for the reporting format. I think this is the first time that filling the documents was a real introspective moment to evaluate our achievements on a project. So that felt amazing. We asked them, we did something on purpose, and it had a positive result versus what you were saying. People in Geneva telling you, don't forget to reserve 40% of your budget for M&E. So to me, that's a big success. Some challenges, I would say, in terms of leaders that we support, we've struggled with network management and alumni engagement. So, one of the things that we talk a lot about at IOF is we have over 2,000 alums that are doing all this cool work around the world. And we always wanted to do better in terms of routine engagement and support to those ventures. And that's just been a challenge because network management is a specialty and it requires staff time that we don't always have. So that's been a challenge. And then I talked about, we engage young people in the design of our fund. We also have aspirations to meaningfully engage people in the design of all of our projects. And that doesn't always happen as well as we would like because things happen fast, proposals come out, you have a month to turn it around. And then, despite your best intentions, you may get to the end where you're about to submit a proposal as a youth organization and you did not schedule a call, you did not appoint somebody on the proposal development team. And, those are the things where I could see if I was a young social entrepreneur. Sometimes you could see, how did this organization submit a proposal with my name on it and I never even saw it or I never even heard from them. So that's an area that I'd like to see us still doing better, is that meaningful engagement in design and also strategically partnering with young social innovators um, as part of like our core values and business model. And so I think that we have some opportunities to kind of lay that out in policy, like X percentage of our portfolio goes to youth led ventures, or this is the process that we'll go through to identify um, youth led partners. But I'd like to see us continuing to push the envelope in that area.
Yeah, let's start with the success because that is a really juicy and really amazing, and I'm really happy to hear that. For a lot of reasons, for my own experience studying in a global north university, in qualified universities to say that they are on the top 25 and in development studies, so to say. I'm really, really glad that an organization as big, as important as International Youth Foundation is starting to change the approach from upside down. From give me the numbers and let me know how much you have changed. That lying with numbers is surprisingly easy when you know how to do it. To hey, tell me how this change is valuable for you, for the people that is working with you, for the people that are beneficiating from you, and how we can make these better. That's beautiful. Yeah, I don't have words to describe it, but I'm really glad that it's happening. About the challenges and especially in the alumni relationship, it's really hard. Yeah, I still haven't don't have an idea how to really approach that. Not that I have any alumni or something like that, but definitely I understand that it's hard for the International Youth Foundation, for universities, for programs where people graduate from. Even, for example, with organizations like Ashoka, who is a really big one and really important in social innovation, they also have a little bit of a difficulty engaging with alumni. Why? I suppose, well, everybody needs to keep going with the project or change life, or I don't know, a lot of things happens. If I ever come with a good idea of how to increase participation in alumni, I will definitely send you an email. Uh,
Oh,
but yeah, thank you very much for sharing all of this. Again, I'm really happy of the changes that you are spearheading, heading in the social innovators.
we can always get better, Carlos. I am proud of the things that we do, but there's always more to be done. And since it brought you so much joy, I'll share just a few other things that have been in my mind that coming back to Sarah Johnson, my job at IOF, what can I do to support? I take it as an accountability call. So these are quotes from an article by IAFP, um, International Association on Family Planning, I think. They published an article, Match Words with Action, Dramatic Shift Needed in Funding and Partnerships with Youth-Led Organizations. These were direct quotes from young social innovators. My hotel room at this conference is more than my monthly organizational budget. I need support to develop a strong organization, not a toolkit produced without my input. If I get one more survey asking about my needs with no follow up, I think I will scream. So I saw that, and then I immediately thought of that focus group discussion that I told you about, and how I'm not sure if I ever meaningfully followed up and connected the dots with the people that gave me those valuable contributions. So I think I'll close out by saying thanks for having me. You had shared a question about advice for young social innovators, and I would say, um, it's know your worth. You know, things are changing kind of from where I sit in my level. Like, people are saying new things. United States Agency for International Development is talking about how can we be the United States Agency for Inclusive Development. People are talking about decolonizing development. People are talking about localization, shifting power. That's always happening at the rhetoric level, and we know that practice lags behind. So know your worth. Know that people recognize things are flawed and things need to change. Um, Value the right voices in the room. It's easy for me to say. It's really hard when the people that have the funding or the support that you need don't see your value, but just know that, value the right voices in the room and identify champions and mentors that can broaden your exposure. And then a last thing I would say is embrace the power you have as an advocate to speak truth to power, but also protect yourself and your boundaries. So, I was speaking with someone recently that I really admire and appreciate because every time I attend a meeting with her, she's the person that's speaking the perfect truth to power, and her finger is always on the pulse of the room, and she's raising those most critical, important issues. And I was paying her a compliment. She's living in Canada, but she's not from Canada. She's from the global south. And I thought I was complimenting her. I love when you do this. And then I saw her face just sink. And it was so interesting because she was reflecting on how she's acquired this personal brand of being the truth speaker, being the fire breather, and how it's so, sometimes it's tiring, it's exhausting, and she's experiencing this duality of like, when I'm home, I'm just myself, and then when I'm in these northern, predominantly white spaces, everyone expects me to say these kinds of things and talk about these kinds of things, and I'm tired. And I think that that's something that's really valid, and people are becoming more aware of it. So, you know, young social innovators, part of their role is advocacy and leadership and truth telling, but don't do it at the expense of your well being and your mental health and how you feel about yourselves. And there's plenty of people, power holders, power brokers that can do more, um, and can take more ownership of changing things for the better.
Oof. Yeah, I definitely understand what she says. Um, Changing just everyone, and I think it's a really important question that I'm gonna make you adding to the last part of the recommendations. What would you recommend to young female social innovators, especially to them, because the, their fight, their struggle is gonna be different and definitely more complicated than somebody that the social innovator that is cisgender, a white and man. Things change. So if you have something that you want to share to them, it would be amazing.
Hmm. Well, one thing I immediately think of, one recommendation to young female social change makers is women have always been leading throughout history. So if you're not familiar with, get tapped into the amazing history of grassroots women led efforts in mobilization because it's just like remarkable, all the amazing things and changes that have happened when women have stepped in to lead. I think another thing, I'm thinking also of imposter syndrome, how that seems to plague a lot of female social change makers. And I experience that, I see it, but some of that self-doubt is rooted in superpowers of like higher order thinking and empathy and awareness, and um that I really think can be the source of what makes women really great leaders. Um, Definitely, you know, finding peer mentors, mentors with more experience that can help you to kind of uh, chip away at that doubt and support you and champion you in your work. Um, but yeah, that's what I would say. Keep being awesome.
Excellent advice. Yeah, the syndrome is a thing. Just to finalize this amazing interview, I really, really enjoyed the chat. How can people reach out to International Youth Foundation?
Hit me up on LinkedIn. My surname is weird. It's Sarah with an H and Johnson with no H, Jonson. So hit me up on LinkedIn or reach out to me at my IYF email account s.jonson@iyfglobal.org. Carlos, thank you so much for taking the time and having me on.
Thank you for the chat. It was beautiful. I always really grateful about the chats with social innovators and leaders, and this one really, really resonated with me. For us, that would be all. Yeah, thanks for being here.
Thanks, man. Good luck recovering from the jet lag, and I'll talk to you soon.
This is all for this episode. We would like to thank all our patrons who have helped us maintain the project. And if you like the episode, be sure to share it and rate it. See you in the next one.